Buffalo Bills 2024 schedule is officially announced. Let's get some instant reaction and dive into it. Vic Carucci joining us, Jonathan Acosta as well. And Vic, schedule at this point has been out for, I'd say, 15 minutes or so. Let's get your immediate thoughts on what pops from the jump.
Yeah, television loves these guys, right? I mean, primetime Bills. And what just really hits me in the face is seeing how many in a row the Bills are playing in primetime. 3 in a row, 4 in 5 weeks in the course of this early part of the season, starting with that Thursday night game against Miami and then Jacksonville and Baltimore. And again, it reinforces what the league, what the networks think of this team as being a contender. We can talk about how young they have gotten this offseason, all the changes of personnel, but to the NFL and certainly to the networks, they are considered TV gold.
And the bettors, they still think the Bills have a chance as one of the few teams at the top of the list to be Super Bowl champions. Jonathan, your initial thoughts of the schedule?
Well, obviously they have that gauntlet at the beginning of the season, like Vic mentioned, with teams like Miami, Jacksonville, Baltimore, Houston, the upstarts with C.J. Stroud, and obviously Stephon Diggs now with the Texans. But I think there's an equally important part in the second half of the schedule. And if you remember back to last year, the Bills went on a second half run in the regular season, starting with the win in Arrowhead against the Chiefs. This time they get the Chiefs in Orchard Park, but it starts another important run for them. They have the Chiefs, a bye week against the Niners right here on Channel 2 on Sunday Night Football, then at LA and at Detroit. That's a huge 4-game stretch right there. And for as important as that first half of the season is, that's a 4-week stretch that could really define their season as well.
So it's funny, we were discussing it before. And Vic, I'm sure you've seen so many schedule releases throughout your time covering the NFL. There are certain things that you immediately look for. For me, from my personal perspective, it is, number one, when is the bye week? So we'll just throw that out there. It's week number 12. That's when I know I should be getting a break here. And I like having the later bye weeks, not only personally, but the team, I think, likes them. As you can see, it gets them healthy, and then they can go on for this home stretch. The primetime games, you're right. They start off at home, though, with Arizona, a nice 1 o'clock Sunday game in Orchard Park. Vic, I know the fan base is really, really happy with this to finally have their feet inside the stadium for the beginning of a Bills season.
Yeah, I think that does matter, to be at home. It matters to the team as well, starting on the road last year as they did in primetime against the Jets. Obviously, the outcome didn't work for them, but a crazy game where Aaron Rodgers' season has ended in a matter of 4 snaps and all the hype about that. And there will be hype about him this year, assuming he is available for when the Bills get a chance to see him for the first time, primetime Monday night on October 14th. But I really think that in terms of how a team kind of gets itself ready, that second week, that Thursday night in Miami, because of the short week, yes, it's advantageous for Buffalo, and it made sense that as soon as you knew about that game, they would be playing their home opener, and it would be a 1 o'clock game because, again, short week and then the travel. But then there's also the long gap between that game, between the Thursday night game and when they play on Monday night against Jacksonville, like an 11-day, it'll feel like an early bye.
And we know this team and players in general, organizations, they're creatures of habit. And this will be an interesting way for them to try to find a flow early in the season without the traditional practice weeks back to back. You're right, Vic. It's probably, they maybe won't even practice coming out of the opener. 2 days, a walkthrough on Tuesday, go down, and then face Miami on Thursday. Then they'll probably come back Friday for treatment, have the weekend off, and then they will just get revving and roaring for maybe Wednesday, Thursday, heading into that Jacksonville week. Good or a bad thing, Jonathan, in your opinion, for this new look version of the Buffalo Bills to face such a challenging test early on in the season?
Well, I think you guys hit on it first. I think it's good for them to start at home, 1 o'clock game, maybe a little bit out of the limelight, kind of how Vic was talking about, compared to last year where there was all the hoopla about the Jets game and being on Monday Night Football. You go down to Miami week 2, it's in September, but it's at night, so you're not playing it in that sun in Hard Rock Stadium. You get, I know the 2 years ago when the Bills were down there.
I sweat through my suit at 10:30 in the morning a couple years ago for a Sunday Miami game. We do not need to be doing that again,
I'm sure the people who were watching that game on TV were a lot happier than the people who were down there in that stadium. So I think obviously being down in Miami for prime time in September is a good get for the Bills. And honestly, I think it's something to where this team is going to have to put it together at some point, regardless of how young they are. So you get to find out early on what this team is made out of. And then even then, it's still a long season. And that's where I think we go back to that second half of the year where they get those big home games against Kansas City and San Francisco, to where if they have a first half of the year like they had last year, they have a little bit of time to get back together and put together a late run stretch.
Vic, is it a good thing or a bad thing that they kind of run a gauntlet early on in the season?
That's tough. Again, I look at how young that we think they're going to be. How many things need to be settled, especially on defense, right? The back end being remade, the pass rush, still some uncertainty there. And of course, offensively, those receivers finding their way in this system. Yeah, they got some experienced people to be a part of that, but you think of how soon does Keon Coleman factor in there? We're thinking sooner than later, but still a young, raw guy. So the combination of the gauntlet, those primetime, as you mentioned, disruptive schedule in terms of your creature of habit schedule being disruptive of preparation, dealing with all of that. And again, being the spotlight team, the team that will be the focal point when you're the only game in town, so to speak, when those games are being played. Another thing that jumps out at me, guys, is Miami, the second time they play Miami at home, it's November 3rd. I mean, I know the weather can do some funky things here in Western New York, but let's assume that's not going to be a real daunting day for Miami in terms of weather coming north. Whereas, it'll be, of course, pretty warm and hot on that Thursday night. And even though the sun won't be baking them, it'll still be a different kind of feel, that South Florida smothering kind of heat.
What's interesting that I just noticed here, they're done with Miami by November 3rd, middle portion of the season, and that's who I think maybe all of us would agree the most likely running mate that they're going to have to try to win this division once again. And so to have both games behind them by the midway point of the season, that's what made them allowed to catch the Dolphins at the back end of last season, because they knew at the very end of the regular season they had the opportunity to do their own work and take out Miami. So I think that's fascinating that it's the Patriots, Jets, Patriots to end the regular season there. You could conversely say, hey, New England's not going to be in it. So if once again you're in the we have to win some football games at the very end of the regular season, that's a pretty good gift to have New England twice in 3 weeks, Jonathan.
Well, especially because I was looking at the schedule, and there's not really a part of it where you're like, oh, this is an easy 2 or 3 game stretch for the Bills. It's maybe they have a game against a Tennessee team who might not be as good, but then you're playing at Seattle on the road. It's always tough for an East Coast team to go to the West Coast team to come to the East Coast. You have a situation where you're playing a young quarterback like Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, but then the very next week you're back home against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So you're right, it is nice for them to get what are theoretically easier games against the Patriots to have the last 3 weeks. But on that note of kind of those big-time divisional matchups, they had the Dolphins on the schedule last year. Who's to say that that's not the Jets this year if they have a healthy Aaron Rodgers playing the whole season? And the NFL sometimes has those flex spots towards the end of the season. Right now it's listed as a 1 o'clock game, but who's to say if both teams are in the AFC East title race that doesn't get to a flex to a late afternoon or even a primetime matchup?
Well, Vic, I know you alluded to it. I think this Bills-Jets in the New Jersey, New York area Monday Night Football is kind of a mulligan do-over because of what ESPN lost with the Aaron Rodgers injury a year ago. It's not maybe as early as I would have anticipated. Yeah, I mean, it's still in the front portion, but you still have to be cautious. Maybe they looked at it and said, let's give Aaron Rodgers a month or 5-6 weeks to feel it out and get reacclimated coming off the Achilles, so maybe they can actually finally maximize that matchup. What are your thoughts on that, Vic?
I think you're absolutely right that this is an opportunity that the league saw by delaying, say, that Jets-Bills game, still keeping it in primetime, but setting up what they would love and what they had hoped to have at the beginning of last season, and that is Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, that duel, and have also the idea that maybe this is the team that will be contending, and you'll get a pretty good idea by that point if these teams have some traction. I mean, the Bills as well, and especially if the Jets have a healthy Rodgers and a Rodgers who has got the feel for the team around him. The other thing in terms of the rivals, I like the fact that the Kansas City game that's in Buffalo is in Week 11. I think that's an advantage because by that point, the Bills are facing the Chiefs team that maybe has settled into what it's going to be about, because they too will undergo, I think, some level of change. And yeah, they're the defending champs and everybody's got it out for them, and they'll be in that tested primetime area as well. But come Week 11, come November 17th, the version of the Chiefs that they face then is going to feel much more like the version of the Chiefs that they could very well see again in the postseason. And again, I think I like that for the Bills.
And it's interesting, Kansas City bye week, then San Francisco, arguably the toughest stretch there of opponents, the two teams that were in the Super Bowl a year ago. You get them both at home with a bye week sandwiched in between. I think we all probably thought the Bills are going to get all their full slate, the full plate of primetime games. And I'm shocked that the Houston Texans is not one of them. Jonathan, it's a 1 o'clock game in Houston on a Sunday. How surprised are you?
When what makes it stand out even more is that it's the only non-primetime game in that 5-week stretch where they do play for primetime games. It probably works in the Bills' benefit that there's less of a spotlight on that game. There's not all the questions of, hey, you're playing against Stephon Diggs. You know, what do you guys think about that matchup? It's interesting because it'll be the first time we see Sean McDermott in that defense going up against C.J. Stroud. And even in that 1 o'clock window, you'd have to imagine that it's going to have the most eyeballs on that game, especially in that early time slot. But yeah, I'm shocked. I think if you would have asked anyone what maybe a late afternoon or a primetime game would have been this season, they would have said Kansas City, San Francisco, and they probably would have had the Texans up there. So to see that not be a night game is pretty surprising.
Vic, you talk with a lot of people at the league level. What do you think maybe the thinking is with this? Is it kind of throwing CBS a bone and saying, hey, we're going to give you a primetime positioned game, even if it's on a Sunday traditional 1 o'clock slot?
Yeah, I was as surprised as you guys that this didn't make it to the primetime spotlight. But that said, whatever drama that is believed to be there or have been there between Josh Allen, especially, and Stephon Diggs, the Bills and Diggs, I think there's a bigger thought that let's see if the Texans are establishing themselves once again as a contending type team. In other words, C.J. Stroud in his sophomore year, are we going to see that same brilliance that he showed as a rookie? And I think that's the real test here. Yes, Diggs is a big part of the story, but really for the fortunes of the Texans, it's got to start with C.J. Stroud. And do you know for sure what you're getting in year 2 with him?
That is the juggling act that I know the schedule makers have to take into account is, do you believe or do you not believe? How much does the team have to prove, or players have to prove themselves before they truly get pushed up to that primetime echelon with the Bills and the Chiefs and the 49ers and things like that? Let's kind of go a little personal here. No holidays for the Bills. Thank goodness.
We love to see it.
We love to spend time with our families, Vic and Jonathan and myself. Yes, I know all of our significant others are very pleased that we will at least be available in some capacity on Thanksgiving and Christmas and other holidays here. Bye week is later. What about, I know Jonathan and I, we're probably going to do a lot of the traveling. Seattle at the end of October. Vic, have you been to Seattle, and what should we expect? Like, what is the vibe, especially maybe that time of year?
Okay, so first of all, the two of you had better go into the fish market there, and I want to see you catching those fish as they throw them to you. You know, I mean, especially you, Jon Scott, because you're the athlete of the group here, and I want to see your form, and then I want Acosta to have the camera ready to get it. Seattle, I've been many times, and first of all, it's a great trip. If you've never been, just to see that part of the country, it is a long haul. You'll feel like you're just going to the end of the earth, so to speak. It feels. I mean, yeah, you go to California and other long trips from Western New York, but that trip is a doozy. And then once you're there, and the fan base, of course, is raucous as it can be, but this is a Seattle team that's hit the reset button. Mike Macdonald, their rookie head coach, no Pete Carroll. And you're talking about the iconic program that he built there. And yes, he's still around the organization, but it is a different football team. And in terms of just the challenge, how they'll plan for that, with the long flight, with getting everybody sort of prepared for that during the week, the body clocks and all of that. It's the same, obviously it's the 3-hour thing, but just that long haul, making everybody, and the Bills are excellent at this, of course, with the sports science department that they have, to just, try to make sure that everybody is used to this, especially those players who haven't dealt with Seattle before.
Seattle checking off one of my final 3 destinations across the NFL, places I have never been. I did not go for that Monday night game, which, I think at this point was 8 years ago. I'm not a Starbucks guy, so I will not be partaking in that. But Vic, we know a lot of the hype around the schedule is because fans want to potentially travel. I'd put Seattle probably at the top of the list. Jonathan, I know you're kind of new to the traveling here. What, from your perspective, are some destinations that you think, hey, I'm excited to check this out?
Well, I would put Seattle at the top of the list. I used to work in Oregon, my first job in sports media, so I've lived in that part of the country, and it looks very different. It's very beautiful, especially that time of the year. It starts to get a little bit more rainy. That market that Vic was referencing, Pike's Place, awesome seafood there. So we'll make sure to get that video of you catching all the fish there, maybe a little clam chowder. Other than that, I'd have to go with another West Coast trip. Last year, the Bills played in LA at SoFi against the Chargers. This year, they get to play against the Rams, also in SoFi. But something that was cool about that trip to play the Chargers was that it was in December. So as the weather starts to get a little bit colder here, you get a little respite, get out there to sunny Southern California. So they have that same opportunity for Bills Mafia here this year. We're coming off that game against the 49ers early December, another trip down to Southern California. So I'm sure a lot of Bills Mafia is going to take advantage to go get some sun for that game.
It better be warmer in LA. It was legit in the 50s, Vic. If I'm going to LA in December and getting a reprieve from Buffalo, I need to be able to go into the Pacific Ocean. As a guy who is very well traveled, Vic, whether it's this schedule or what, I mean, so what are some of your top destinations when you're out on the road?
Yeah, look, I'm a barbecue guy, so going to Kansas City, first the smell wafting from the parking lot of all the barbecue, great barbecue, and my favorite place, Arthur Bryant's. I mail order all their rubs and sauces, so I'm that kind of fan of that place. So KC's always been big on the list for me. I also actually love Indianapolis. I know that's going to sound boring to a lot of people. We go there for the combine, but it's such a convenient city. Everything is so close, and you could, the walking bridges. I mean, the game will be November 10th. If it's a little chilly, you don't want to walk outside, you can pretty much stay inside from your hotel to the, to Lucas Oil Stadium. But, SoFi Stadium obviously is an event going there. That is I think the model place of the most advanced, I guess, of all stadiums. You remember Terry Pagula when he was talking about the concept of what is now the new Highmark Stadium. He said, it won't be SoFi, it won't be AT&T, it'll be a Buffalo-type stadium. But I do think that in terms of when you go to see these high-end places with all the bells and whistles, part of you is going to think about, okay, are some of these bells and whistles going to be what we'll be seeing in Orchard Park come 2026? So I think that's the cool part of going to some of the newer venues.
Vic, Indianapolis is legit. I love that place, and I'll say this, I will double down. I know these aren't going to be what the Bills Stadium looks like, in particular because they're not going to be a dome, but I think Ford Field in Detroit and Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis are two of the very best stadiums in all of the National Football League. And I've been, as I said, to almost every single one of them. SoFi's cool, but it's in a world of its own. And I think if it's still called NRG in Houston, that's another one. I'll just say this for people potentially looking to book to maybe some of these. The stadium in Houston is not by downtown Houston. It's a little outside. Obviously, everybody knows Foxborough Gillette is not in the Boston. I stayed in Providence for the first time last year. It's about equidistant from Boston. That's a pretty cool option between Boston and Providence. And the even the Rams Stadium, the SoFi Stadium, it's out by LAX, but depending upon which pocket you choose out in Los Angeles, just be aware. If you're going to make these trips, to look where the stadium is and understand what type of commute you're going to do with. Jonathan, I'll get your final thoughts. Vic, we'll get yours after his.
When you brought up Detroit, I think if we talk about interesting road games for the Bills, that's kind of the last one I want to touch on, because we know they played there recently on Thanksgiving, but this game is probably going to have a lot more juice to it with how good the Lions are coming off of an NFC Championship game appearance. We expect them to, again, be in the hunt this year. It's a close trip for Bills Mafia here in Western New York. So I expect that coming off of, again, it closes out that gauntlet of Kansas City, San Francisco, LA, in Detroit. That's going to be a heck of a game in a place that's going to be easy for Bills Mafia to travel to.
Vic, final thoughts, as the schedule is now about 30 minutes since it's been released.
Yeah, as I keep looking at this early stretch, guys, and especially, again, where they are positioned in terms of prime time and when they face, I think, some teams that will be serious contenders. I do think the Dolphins on a Thursday night in Miami after a quick, and it's a short week for them too, but it's their home game. That's something that I look at to kick off this stretch of then Miami, Jacksonville, at Baltimore, at Houston, and then at the Jets. Those three in a row on the road, Baltimore, Houston, and the Jets. By the time they take on Tennessee, October 20th in Orchard Park, I think we're going to have a really good idea of what this team is. I understand last year, if you went only by that horrible stretch that ended with the loss, the primetime loss against the Broncos, you would have said, okay, season over, and some people did. But I know they can rebound, and we've talked a lot, and Jonathan's mentioned, I think rightfully so, that the second half is what you want to look at if you have to rebound from a tough first half. But I'd say if they've established themselves as the strong contending team, or the opposite of that, we're going to know a lot come October 20th when they're taking on Tennessee.
I mean, we knew the opponents, but to see the way that it stacks out, I agree with you. You said it earlier. You don't really go a 2+ week stretch beyond that where you say, well, these should be winnable games for them. So not much time at all as the course of this thing unfolds where they can take a breath and maybe either, if they need to get healthy, or run off some wins to try to get back in the hunt or separate it. It's not going to be easy, but I'm just glad that we can now look at the schedule, start booking some travel, and not guess and not go about what Twitter and X is telling me that all of these games are. Vic Carucci, Jonathan Acosta, I'm Jon Scott. We'll talk more Bills coming up later.